Before we begin today's episode, I want to take a moment to share something important with you. Today's conversation is with Caroline Bomer, the creator behind Flourish and Flow and host of the Flourish and Flow podcast. When Caroline and I recorded this conversation, she was joyfully expecting a son. Since that time, Caroline gave birth to her precious baby boy, Joseph Bomer, on June 26, 2025. Soon after birth, Joseph unexpectedly passed away. This episode now carries a different weight, as you'll hear us talk about pregnancy and health in the midst of what was such a hopeful season for her. Out of respect for Caroline and Joseph's story, I wanted to give you that context before you listen. Caroline has shown incredible courage and faith in continuing to share her journey publicly, and she has graciously allowed this conversation to be shared here as well. My hope is that as you listen, you'll hear not only her wisdom and insight, but also the strength of a woman whose story continues to speak life, even through heartbreak. Caroline, thank you for your vulnerability and for letting us hold this space with you. Welcome to More Precious Than Rubies, where we explore and celebrate the stories of women in our modern world. I'm Ariana, and in today's episode, we delve into the world of women's health with Caroline Bomer, content creator, business owner, host of the Flourish and Flow podcast, and soon-to-be mom. Caroline is passionate about helping women understand their menstrual cycles, hormones, and fertility, empowering them to live with ease, healing, and confidence. Stick with us as we discuss Caroline's personal journey and her mission to educate women about their bodies. Caroline, welcome to the show. It's so fantastic to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here today.
I have been so inspired as I've been listening to some of your podcast episodes and watching your videos about how passionate you are about women's health. I think that nowadays in the age of social media, it's been really cool to see people using platforms for positive education and especially for the female space. So I've been cheering you on as a silent follower, and I'm just so excited that you're willing to talk to me today. So to get started, can you share with us your journey? So how did you become passionate about women's health? And what led you to create Flourish and Flow?
Well, first off, thank you. I appreciate your support. And I think the topic of women's health and cycles and all of that has gained a lot of popularity in the last few years. So for me, my journey started when I was like 14, 15. I had really painful periods. Like there's like cramps, but this was on a whole nother level. And one day when I was a sophomore in high school, I actually almost passed out at school. I was throwing up. I was in so much pain. And I was like just shaking, sweating. It was like by far the worst pain imaginable. And it just like continued to get worse. And so they gave me birth control, which quote unquote helped because I no longer had a cycle. But I always wondered like what's really going on with my body and like how is this going to affect my future? And I'd go to doctor after doctor and they're just like, oh, well, we'll figure that out in the future. Or like, oh yeah, that's kind of weird. I've never heard of that before. Or like, I just would kind of get brushed off a lot. And of course, all throughout that, a lot of prayer was involved and just like asking God, like, where do I go for answers? Like, who's can I find that's going to help me? Like, is this just going to be like the rest of my life? But God was like, just don't worry about it. And he kept telling me to put it aside. And so I'd had to really trust that. And it was right after I got married in 2021, like literally like 2 weeks after, God was like, okay, now I'm going to start giving you some answers. And I found some podcasts. I don't even know how I found this podcast. It wasn't one I listened to. I wasn't a huge podcast person at the time. And someone explained, here's how your cycle works. Here's how your hormones work. And my mind was just totally blown. And so that gave me the confidence, like that snowballed into learning so much more. And it gave me the confidence to go off the pill and figure out what's going on with my body on my own and just kind of go from there. And about 8 months later, I had my first totally pain-free period. Like, wow. Felt fantastic. No cramping. I could get up. I was like, I feel pretty functional. Like I could go to work, like, and feel fine. And going from like almost passing out every time and like curled up in a ball in pain and like a couple ER trips throughout the years to then feeling fantastic.
Seriously.
I was like, this is just too amazing. So I can't not share that with people of like how capable our bodies are of healing and how amazing our cycles can be. And I just wish every woman knew that, because it's so hard to learn about. And so many women struggle with issues like with their period. And I just want to help other people find that hope and healing with it. So, because it can be so amazing.
Totally. And I'll say, like, personally, I embarrassingly didn't learn about the like sections of our cycle until I think last year, because I go to the gym almost daily, and I think it was like a gym influencer or something was like, hey, have you ever felt like this and this way on week 1, 2, 3, and 4 of your month of your cycle, and like you're wondering why? And then she explained it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so seen. Like, obviously I had a feeling everyone else like went through that, but I also through my life have gone through like an intense journey with acne. So that's actually what started my journey on birth control. Was my dermatologist recommended it to kind of regulate my hormones, which I'm sure you'll get into that later about how like that may not be the right thing and the right step to take. And I was like 18. That journey has kind of just spiraled into like late stage education for me in my womanhood. And so that's why, again, I'm just so thankful for people your age and your stage to come alongside women of hopefully younger ages to help educate them about their period and why that's okay to not know about it until maybe they're my age.
Yeah, like there's so many things. It's like how, like that's what I felt like. I feel like everyone that I've talked to when they learn about it, they're like, where has this been all my life? Whether they're like 18 or they're 45, like, yes, or older, they're like, man, I wish I knew that when I was younger. And it does just make like intuitive sense. You're like, oh, I do feel differently like week to week. And but it's sometimes takes that like someone pointing it out and you're like, oh, that makes sense. And then you start to just, yeah, everything starts to click into place.
Totally. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about how some podcasts kind of boosted your interest and your passion for women's health and fertility health. But what did your research process look like as you began to dive into women's health? Like, in addition to podcasts, were there any other things that you used as research?
There are a couple books that I read. The lady that was interviewed on this podcast, particularly, she had PCOS and she totally healed it. And honestly, I'd say was like one of the pioneers in the cycle space of understanding women's cycles and helping it become more well-known and understood. And from there, I just kept finding like connections of like, oh, this person referenced that. And then I have a little bit of background in research. Okay. So I tapped into that a lot too, like diving into more of like actual research studies and exploring that space. So just talking with lots of women about their experience. So yeah, just pulling from everywhere I can. It's like a whole spider web.
Yeah. And you have a podcast. And so you've interviewed some people that have either just stories similar to yours or are maybe experts in different areas. And so I'm sure that you've gained a lot of knowledge from just talking to them as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's so fascinating hearing like everyday women's experiences. And because I think that's a huge thing is that you don't have to be an expert to understand your own body, and you don't have to go get a degree in cycles and biology to like understand like what's going on with your hormones. Like, I mean, I understand it probably more than the average person because this is what I do on a daily basis. But sure. I'd say for the average woman, like there's so much power in just like everyday people's stories. And like you said, you don't have to be an expert to understand that.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm rooting for you. Like as you continue to educate yourself, I'm thankful because like science is not my thing. So I root for the girlies that are like, oh, I think I can handle this really complex biological subject. And I'm like, yay, because then I don't have to like read science books. I can just listen, and you listen to it in a story way of like, hey, I've went through this and this is what I've learned and this is how it translates for other people. So I love it. I'm excited to hear more stories because that's what I love too, stories of other people who you can kind of find similarities in. And I'm sure you've appreciated that too, of like, I feel so seen right now.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and hopefully those listening could get a little taste of that today.
Yes, totally. So let's start talking about some information that people can kind of learn about their menstrual cycle. So can you walk us through the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle and what women should know about their body and how it changes throughout the month?
So the simplest way I could explain it, try to give like a 2-minute overview, is you have 4 different phases of your cycle. So a lot of people, they use the word cycle to mean their period. But when I say cycle, I mean like the whole thing, including the time in between your periods. So your hormones are fluctuating each and every day. So starting out with your period, that's day 1 of your cycle. That's considered the menstrual phase. And that's the one we're most familiar with, right? It's when you're bleeding. And then after your period ends, you go into the follicular phase. So this is actually when the process of your ovaries are developing, and the follicles in your ovaries are preparing for ovulation. And that's when an ovulation is when an egg is released. So it happens usually about 2 weeks before your period. But it does not always happen on day 14. So if you're trying to get pregnant or you're trying to avoid pregnancy, or you just want to get in sync with your cycle, then knowing that day is really important. And there's lots of different ways to tell. But yeah, your energy all throughout that is kind of like spring and summer. You could think of like your energy picks up, you feel more energetic and a lot more creative and social. Your communication skills are actually a lot better. And then after you ovulate, then you go into your luteal phase. And usually this one gets a lot of hate or people are like, because they think of like PMS and like mood swings and crazy cravings and all those things. But actually that's probably my favorite phase because it's not supposed to be like that. It could be so amazing. So in that phase, you're going to feel a little bit more serious, focused. It's the longest phase. It lasts ideally anywhere from like 12 to 16 days. Most people, though, it's shorter than that because their hormones need a little support, which is why you have PMS and stuff like that. And then, then once your period starts, that's the next cycle. So if pregnancy were to occur, then that would start during your luteal phase, and that's why you don't get a period. So those are the 4 basic phases. And you can kind of think of them like seasons of the year. So you have your period, which is like winter. Things are really slow, really chill. Hormones are really low. And then you've got spring and summer. Yeah, spring and summer with the follicular ovulatory phases. And then luteal phase where things are kind of like fall, where things start to wind down, cool down a little bit. So.
And where you really just want to be under a blanket and like not talk to anyone with like a warm drink or something.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's fantastic. I think it's super helpful that you talked about the like symptoms, for lack of a better word, because I think that some people have trouble kind of recognizing or syncing, for lack of a better word, they're like weeks to what am I feeling? And especially if, like you said, and I've read through one of your emails in the newsletter, is like oftentimes if you have an unhealthy period, those periods start to blend together or they last way longer than they're supposed to. So some people might be hearing you say those symptoms and they're like, I only have that for a day. Like, what's wrong with me? Or like this fall period is lasting way too long and it shouldn't be that way. So as we kind of get more into these questions, I'll be glad to hear you explaining like how we can fix that. And so to kind of continue, how can women align their daily routines like exercise, work, self-care with the different phases of their cycle?
So unless you're on birth control, then you have a cycle. So it's your hormones are fluctuating each and every day. That includes hormones like estrogen, progesterone, those are the main 2, also like FSH, LH, there's a bunch. But whether you realize it or not, like they are changing and affecting your mental health, your physical health, every system in your body. It's not just your reproductive system. So knowing what's happening is really, really key. And I'd say with like exercise and work and that sort of thing, you just want to treat it like the different seasons. That's the easiest thing.
Okay.
And So like things that you naturally love in spring and summer when things are really fun, really social. There's a lot of new beginnings and starting points. Like that's the vibe of those two phases. I kind of lump them together because they feel really similar.
Okay.
I'd say that like the ovulatory phase, it's really short. It's considered to be really short anyway, like only 3 to 4 days long. So I just kind of lump it all with the follicular phase because it just is like peak energy, peak socializing, like peak fun and creativity. So some people have symptoms around then too. That's another thing to pay attention to. A little red flag that your hormones might need a little extra support too. But yeah, so like that's going to feel really natural. And then in your luteal phase, like when things are slowing down, the most body changes happen during the luteal phase. So you actually need more calories during that phase because your metabolism increases. Your body reacts differently to like insulin and like the digestion and what you're eating. Like exercise is a big one too. Your body will have a harder time with like more intense exercises. It's going to put more effort to doing the same things you were doing a week ago. I kind of like see the menstrual phase, like your period, as both like an end and a beginning. When with your period, like, I mean, it's really normal. Your hormones are at their lowest point. You're just going to feel really chill. A healthy period, like you're going to feel really slow, low energy. So even like when I had like my best period ever, I wasn't like, let's go host a party. I was like, I can function on, I feel fine, but like I'm not feeling like crazy out there or anything like I might when I'm ovulating.
Sure.
So yeah, it totally affects every aspect of your life, and getting in sync with that and understanding how you personally feel, because everyone's got their own personality too. Like if you're more introverted or actually more extroverted, like, or even what your hobbies and you know, things like that are, that's going to vary person to person. So I always encourage women that, like, if you look up a cycle syncing chart, those could be a helpful starting point to start to understand what's happening, but it's not another protocol to follow. Like you really want to understand, like, get in tune with how you feel in each phase and start to tune into that and listening to your body more than anything.
Something that I've learned as I've continued to gain more knowledge about my cycle is to like be forgiving of yourself. I think that in a day and age where there's so much comparison and like people who have maybe unhealthy cycles because of how they're treating their bodies, but it may like appear a certain way on the outside or on social media, is like there are going to be days in your cycle where you need more calories and you're going to be hungry, and that's okay. Like don't punish yourself because you feel like you need to eat more or you're hungry. Like that's because your body does need more calories. Like scientifically, you do need more calories.
Yeah, totally. Or like even like socially, you know, where it's like, man, I did this awesome interview where I was like I went on a date last week and I felt super great. And like this week I feel like super off and my words aren't working. And it's like, that's okay. Like it's just your body naturally changing. Like I remember I was finishing up college when I started cycle syncing and all that. And being able to plan out like my assignments or my study groups, or then getting into like working and now being an entrepreneur, like knowing when I'm going to have the most creativity or when I'm going to have the best like detail-oriented focus, like all those different things, like it's made things so much easier.
That's fantastic advice. So we talked a little bit about how we can kind of change the way we do our weekly activities or the way that we form our work around our cycle, but what role does nutrition play in supporting hormonal balance, and what are some go-to tips that you recommend?
The biggest thing is making sure you're eating enough. Most women are under eating without even realizing it. I look back and I was probably getting 1,200 calories a day at best. And then I would like binge a big bowl of ice cream at the end of the night.
And, ice cream's my weakness too.
I still love ice cream. Okay. I'm not saying you have to ever give that up, but your body's doing so much. And so, and like, especially women, I feel like, you know, we're really prone to dieting and like restricting and cutting. And that's not what like a fertile, healthy cycle body needs. Like, I don't like to throw out a specific number because then I feel like people jump to that.
Yeah.
And your body's not adapted to that. Our bodies are awesome at adapting, but with gradual change. So
Sure.
if you're getting like 1,000 calories right now, and I tell you like, oh yeah, women need about like 2,200 calories to thrive, jumping to that straight away is not
Right.
the game.
Right.
Because your body's like, whoa, too much. So yeah, small, simple changes over time are always better. But yeah, eating enough, balancing your blood sugar. So starting with a good protein-rich breakfast in the morning. So
Yes.
sometimes this is enough for people to get rid of their PMS, is just having a protein-rich breakfast in the morning.
Wow.
So I'd say like aiming for at least 25 grams of animal-based protein. So whether that's like yogurt, eggs, sausage, like steak, whatever. And then I'd say working your way up to about probably double the carbs. And if you're getting animal protein, you're naturally getting in fat. So
Yeah.
don't need to worry about that. So we need all of those things, carbs, fat, and protein.
Yep.
I don't restrict any food groups. And I'm not a proponent of dieting in any way. That includes like seed cycling, if you've heard of that, where people change what seeds they eat based off of what phase of the cycle that they're in.
Oh.
Like make it as simple as possible.
Yeah.
Of just eating real foods locally and in season. It's farmers market season right now.
Yes.
So go to your local farmers market, pick up your favorite fruits. That's gonna be the best thing. Limiting ultra processed foods, or especially like seed oils. That is a big one. I do.
I was going to ask you about your seed oils, because that's something that I learned about through you. So if you could explain that a little more, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, so seed oils are going to be anything that's polyunsaturated fats. So that's what is promoted as healthy nowadays.
Okay.
It's quote unquote heart healthy. It's better than saturated fat. Saturated fat is the enemy, but it's actually the opposite is true. Saturated fat is what's great for your hormones.
Okay.
And polyunsaturated fats are going to be like canola oil, vegetable oil. So it's the process of like getting those things in nature, like, is really, really difficult.
Sure.
And not to mention like the really highly inflammatory, and that high inflammation is going to correlate directly to like cramps and hormone
Bloating,
issues.
I'm sure too, right?
Yeah, bloating. So if you're looking for like cooking oils, I stick to things like tallow, even like bacon grease, and I'd say like good quality olive oil.
Okay.
Sometimes avocado oil. That one is kind of hit or miss, but
What about coconut oil?
Oh, we love coconut oil. That one too.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of the like really cheap oils that you find are like, and again, it's not that you have to be perfect with it and like never have it again, but that is something that I definitely prioritize, like not having. Just because of the fact that it does have on your body, especially like your cycle.
And I think what I'm hearing is like, at the end of the day, if you're ever confused about what you should be putting in your body, like natural is better, and balancing all of the food groups and the things that you know your body, like the things you learned in the food pyramid when you were a kid, like we've probably grown through these fad diets of like no carb and like low fat and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But as a woman, it's so important for us to have those things in our bodies. Like I'm sure that there are things that men could handle that women could not, you know, like I think a lot of times fat is a scary word and carbs is a scary word, but we need to know that those things are super important for our bodies and they exist in like a food sense for a reason. And especially if you're doing more natural fats and more natural proteins and oils like you were talking about, I think that's something that I'm thankful for that a lot of girls are, I think, learning now is that high protein is super important, not just if you're looking to like build a healthier body, whether it's strength or just health in general. I think on top of calories, girls don't realize how little protein they're getting too. If your goal is to like build muscle, and if it is also to like lose weight, you actually need to eat more protein and more nutrient-rich foods than you are right now. And it's just so interesting that it all connects together, like healthy period, build muscle, like have a healthy body, like all those things are connected to healthy fats, natural foods, eating carbs, like being okay with eating a slice of bread at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Yes, I will add that, like you said, men's bodies are built differently. A lot of things when it comes to diets like keto or intermittent fasting, or like low calorie, low carb, like low fat, whatever the newest, latest thing is, they're all almost always researched just on men, not on fertile women.
Wow.
So the little bit of research that we do have where it does include women who are in their fertile years, it shows negative effects because our bodies do not respond well to, as like we respond very differently to stress. Our bodies are a lot more protective, especially when it comes to our cycles, because we're carrying life. Like that takes a lot of effort and energy, right? Compared to a man's body. So your body's going to respond totally different to those cues that you're sending it through food or lack thereof.
I was just going to note that you have a super helpful like checklist that I'm sure I mentioned earlier that I read through on your newsletter. So I would encourage listeners to go to your website and sign up for your newsletter, and you get that free guide when you sign up. And then I think as a second little email, I got another checklist from you that had a recipe for a special drink that you recommend. So don't tell people, because I'm going to make it be something that they should sign up for if they want to get this drink that can help to help with your cramps, right? And just your period health in general.
Yeah. The whole checklist is just like everything you should look for of like red flags that you think are normal.
Yep.
And then, some little quick tips to help get you started to have a happy period again.
Yes. So I'll link your website and then the link to your newsletter too in the show notes for anyone that wants to get that checklist, because it was super helpful for me. I think I actually went through it and I was surprised to see that I had a healthier one than I thought. We were talking a little bit about misinformation about like female bodies versus men's bodies. So what are some of the biggest myths that you hear about periods and fertility, and how do you work to correct them through your content?
I think the biggest one is that periods should be awful. Like it's just part of being a woman. Any other like point of misinformation is really nuanced, and like there's so many rabbit holes you could like directions you could take this question. But I'd say that is the ultimate thing is we expect puberty to be like really awful, and then now you have a cycle, and that's annoying and frustrating, and like you're down and out once a month, and then like pregnancy is terrible and miserable. I keep getting told that, like, people are like, oh, aren't you just so miserable already? I'm like, not really, actually. Feel really great. And then like birth is this big scary thing, and then motherhood is this big scary thing. I'd say that is the biggest misinformation, is that like your body is against you and it should be miserable. And I know some people even bring in like the biblical perspective of like that's Eve's curse, is childbearing and fertility and your cycle.
Gosh,
it's a punishment. Not true.
Yes, totally.
Not true at all. So your cycle is such a gift, and I honestly felt like so much more of a connection like to God through my cycle and understanding my body and how he designed my body to work and to function. Your body is amazing, and your period is designed to be easy and regular and beautiful.
That's wonderful advice, Caroline. Yeah, and I've seen that come through your content. Just this morning, I saw one where you were using like graph evidence. Like you're not just claiming this stuff, like you have things to back it up, and you're doing your research to make sure that you're speaking to both different perspectives and you're exploring all different things. So I commend you for that. Like really, you are doing the work to kind of defeat those lies and that misinformation that's out there. You're bringing up like pregnancy and how that's kind of been something that people have also said like, oh, this must be terrible. Of course, on the flip side of fertility being wonderful, infertility can also be a really difficult emotional journey. I have a friend who's going through that right now, and she's very vocal about it, how it's been difficult for her. So how do you approach conversations with women who are experiencing infertility, and what encouragement or insights do you hope that they take away from your work?
This is definitely like a sensitive topic. And I actually had 2 miscarriages myself last year as we were trying to conceive, and learned a lot through that process. But ultimately, I think it's really interesting. I feel like I had a very unique experience too. Like it was still like really difficult. And of course, like there were a lot of difficult moments and a lot of questions that came up. But I didn't feel like a lot of other people where it was just like totally shattered me and like this really, really dark thing. I still was able to find trust in my body and be able to trust God through that process, which I know is a really big struggle for a lot of people. So the struggles of fertility are rising and increasing year after year for men and for women. And I think there's a lot more that we can do to support our bodies. And if you're ignoring cycle symptoms now, it's no wonder that you might struggle with conceiving and pregnancy later, because that is the foundation of pregnancy, is your cycle. That's the whole point, right? Women are so disconnected from their bodies. We don't even understand how our bodies work to begin with. And then often we're on birth control for a lot of years. And then whether that's for symptoms or just preventing pregnancy. And then we expect it to be like this easy thing of like, oh, I'll just go off the pill and get pregnant and then we're good. And like just live happily ever after. And women don't realize like all like those synthetic hormones, the effect that they can have on like your future hormones and cycle. And there's just like this domino effect. Okay. And there's so much more you could do to support your fertility than you realize. Like women are often told like, oh, if you can't get pregnant in 6 months or a year, come back and then like we'll give you more medications and like make this thing happen. Rather than why is your body not struggling? Like why is your body struggling in the first place? Like where's this coming from? Because for some women, it is just a nutritional thing. Like they're simply not eating enough. And so their body is not ovulating. Like if you're not ovulating, there is no opportunity to create a baby. Yeah. That's half the puzzle. And sometimes it's a really simple thing, but like conventionally, there's not a lot of digging into like what's really, really going on. And even like when it comes to testing hormones, a lot of people aren't doing that accurately. And there's just so much to explore. And so, which might sound overwhelming, but I hope that sounds more hopeful than anything, that there are so many things that you can do to support your body and to support your fertility starting now, whether you want to conceive soon now or not, and or not for a while. Like you can set yourself up like so well through like your good daily habits, eating really well and nourishing your body and checking in with your cycle and understanding like how things are going on there. Because your period is like a report card. It is going to tell you how well your hormones are doing. So like those are all things you can do now. So yeah, I hope that the message of like, if you're struggling with fertility, that there's so much you can do to support your body. So,
do you think that's something that's being communicated to a lot of women, or do you find that the women that you talk to that struggle with infertility, like that's just not something that's brought up in their appointments?
Yeah, I find that it's often missed and it's not talked about. Like, it's just, oh, you're just not ovulating, so we'll give you this medication to like make you ovulate. And
got it. It's always first running to medications and not like, what does your diet look like? What does your habits and activities look like? What does your period look like? That's less of a thing.
Yes, exactly. There's a lot of hope.
Yeah, I think that starting with hope is important, and also like doing more research outside of like a doctor's appointment or an initial opinion is always super important. Like speaking to women who have gone through it is also important. Looking up to see if there's anyone that's been in your shoes that's like, I've actually been able to do it this way. I think that that's important to hear multiple opinions from women that have gone through it too. So that's great advice. Start with hope. So you've shared insights about the benefits of understanding your natural cycle and have encouraged women to consider life off of hormonal birth control. So what are some of the key reasons you believe that this can be a valuable shift, and how can someone begin that transition in an informed and empowered way? So you said similar to like how we shift our calories. If you were to tell someone a number and they went from 1,000 to 2,000, that's a lot for their body, which I'm sure can be very similar for a shift off of birth control. So what does that look like?
Yeah. So on birth control, there's usually two different types. There's either ones with like estrogen and progestin, or it's just progestin. So, and there's a bunch of different delivery systems, but ultimately they all function very similarly. Birth control, especially if you're on it for symptoms like you said, like acne, or like I was on it for painful periods. Some people go on to quote unquote regulate their cycle. And This is another myth that it tricks your body into thinking it's pregnant. That is not how pregnancy works. That's not how birth control works. It actually puts your body into a menopausal state, but that's not as marketable, especially when you're giving it to teenagers and young women. To say like, hey, you're hormonally going to be like a postmenopausal woman, like an old lady. And then not to mention, like, of course, there's all the side effects. I'm sure many people have heard of like the laundry list, or you've got like the blanket of an insert with microscopic print. And it really, how it works is just by like shutting down your cycle. And so you don't go through those 4 phases. And even if you do have a bleed, it's not technically a real period. It's called a withdrawal bleed. And the levels of hormones and synthetic hormones, I just recorded a couple episodes on like estrogen and progesterone and like the natural versus synthetic hormones, diving really deep into this and like how they work differently in the body. Because especially with like progestin versus your natural progesterone, totally different, totally different. So, and a lot of women struggle when they come off of it, whether it's like with their liver or they have like just like post-birth control symptoms. And I would say it's because it does put a lot of stress on your body, and ovulating regularly is so protective for your health. Like having a healthy, fertile cycle. And even if you have irregular cycles and you're not on birth control, like that's again, it's just important for your health. Your cycle is often referred to as like your 5th vital sign. Even like the people that like the ACOG, American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, they set the standards like for the nation when it comes to medical stuff. And they say that your cycle is your 5th vital sign. If you don't have a cycle and you're like shutting that down, then you're not getting that feedback from your body. So I'd say that is really key. And a lot of times if it's a pregnancy thing, if like, oh, like I don't want to get pregnant though, which is understandable, then there are other methods. It's like fertility awareness, and that is an umbrella. Like there's a lot of different methods within fertility awareness methods that might work better for you than others. So it's not a one size fits all thing. And so there's a lot of flexibility, but yeah, synthetic hormones just do act very, very differently in the body, and they're going to impact your brain, your gut. They're going to deplete nutrients. Like there's just like things to take into consideration. And then the other caveat I will add with like the copper IUD is that even though it's hormone free, it's not symptom free.
On to the next question. So a recent study found microplastics. This is a term that's been widely now in social media, and the concern of microplastics, especially for female bodies. So the study found microplastics in ovarian follicular fluid, raising concerns about environmental impacts on reproductive health. So how can women decrease exposure to endocrine disruptors in everyday life?
Yes, this is such a good point to touch on. So endocrine disruptors are basically any chemicals like microplastics that interfere with your body's ability to make, use, or eliminate its own natural hormones. So it can like block certain receptors, or it can trick your body into thinking that there's more of something, or it causes like this whole cascade of things. So the most common sources are, I'd say, like cosmetics. Yeah, cosmetics are a huge one. So makeup, and your skin is an organ, and it's really great at absorbing things. So what you're putting on your skin, even like lotions, especially the smelly Bath and Body Works, or like a lot of scented candles, release things into the air that can mess with your hormones. How you're storing your food. So like if you're cooking, or like cooking your food. So if you're reheating your leftovers in a plastic Tupperware, that's going to be a big one. Unfortunately, you just have to assume that things probably have endocrine disruptors in them unless you're intentionally avoiding it. Our 21st century modern lifestyle is so not set up for hormonal health, especially for women. So I do have a whole podcast episode of this at the very beginning. I think it was number maybe 3. Maybe number 2, that just goes through endocrine disruptors and how to start swapping those things out without stressing yourself out. And I'd say another big exposure too would be clothing. this is something I think is starting to be talked about more, especially in the endocrine disruptor space. But if you're like polyester, rayon, spandex, those are all, or it's like, oh, this is 80% recycled. It's recycled what? Plastic. So it might feel like fabric, but at the end of the day, it is also just plastic that you're wearing on your body. And so that is something that I also would encourage people to switch to natural fibers as much as you can, especially your underwear. So like that is going to be a really, really big one of how breathable your fabrics are. Also, ironically, especially like the fitness industry, like how often do you see natural fibers in like leggings or sports bras and things? It's always like synthetic.
Can't think of one.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, totally. So I've seen it mentioned, but not talked about super in depth, even in the hormone space, is like the clothing that you're wearing. So,
and I'm sure like speaking of clothing, like detergent and like dryer sheets and all that stuff, like the plastic packs that our detergent is in, or the container that our detergent is in, like all of those are plastic.
Yes, there's a lot. And I will say, like, after now, like looking back at the last few years of slowly swapping things out one at a time, it's so much nicer now having a baby because we don't have to buy any special stuff. Like we could use our same detergent, could use the same lotion, like all of these things. Like we don't have to make any of these big changes of like, oh, we have to get the baby safe stuff and then we have our stuff. It's like, it's all safe. That's just what I reach for now. Like when we need to restock on something, I don't even have to think about it. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think at the front, it takes a little research, but after that, you know what's safe and you know what you can reach for and that it doesn't have to break the bank. I think that's a great summary of what we just talked about for endocrine disruptors, and important to go back and listen to your episode because I'm sure you go into a lot more detail about what that means for our bodies. So super helpful there. So let's go back a little bit into your social media platform. So how has sharing your story on social media and your podcast impacted others? Are there any moments that have stood out to you in that?
I think it's generally like helping women find like the confidence again in being able to trust their bodies and to understand like, oh, I'm not crazy. That this is like, oh, this is happening. Or when, there's like stories where people come to me and they'll share about how they're like, yeah, I wanted to get my IUED out and like I had to go to 5 different doctors because no one would like let me take it out. And I know I'm like, really? This is just like a year ago.
Oh my gosh.
And or if women are like they are struggling with fertility and they're looking for like extra support, if they're like, this is what I was told, but I don't know what else to do. And I'm like really careful not to be like, oh, this is what to do, because that is for you to explore and decide like based on your values and your life. But to say, these are other options to consider, or here's some other things like places to learn about what you're going through. And that has been like the best thing. Or I taught a couple classes like in person, and there's one to like a homeschool group for girls 8 and up and their moms. And the funnest thing was like teaching all of this at like an 8-year-old level. But then all these moms, like they're sitting there like jaws dropped. And they're like, what? And like, I think like how fun it was to see like these girls, 8 to 13 years old, seeing their moms like learn about this and get excited about their bodies and like talk about it more openly of like, man, I wish I do that. Or like, that makes so much sense. Or what about this? Well, how does this work? And like just that aspect of like watching women get excited about like learning about how amazing their bodies are that will never, ever get old. Ever. So,
and you're empowering generations. Like you're empowering women to know how to talk to their daughters when they have questions when they grow up. And I'm sure that the 8-year-old girls understood that to their level, but they're going to have more complicated questions when they grow up. And now the moms know where to start, or they know like where to start their own research so that they can help to improve their daughters' lives as they get older. That's super neat to see. And I'm sure like you as a storyteller, where you're empowering other women to share their own story as well, because there's value in understanding each other and finding similarities in each other's stories, even if it's not exactly the same. I think we can all find a point in each other's story to be like, oh, I have felt that, or I have a friend that has that experience that I can now encourage her in this way, or I know how to talk to her, I know how to listen to her better. I hope and pray for women to hear this and feel confident that they can make a change quickly, that's healthy, still healthy for their bodies in simple ways and affordable ways. Many people assume that once menstruation ends, conversations around cycle health are no longer relevant, but hormonal health continues to play a huge role in overall well-being as we age. So how do you approach education around menstrual and hormonal health for women in their 40s and beyond, and why is it still so important at that stage of life? You just talked about the joy of seeing women, like their minds being blown about, I've never heard this before, and why has this never been taught to me before? So why do you think that this education is so important, even like when our period ends, quote unquote?
Like you said, the generational impact is so key. I've had people reach out where they're like, yeah, I'm like getting really close. Like I'm perimenopausal, so cycle's on its way out, but I have a daughter and I want her to know all of this. So I'm learning everything I can now. And I applaud those women. Honestly, like that is a fantastic mission. And I would say that like if you're looking at your own health, like going into menopause, that how your cycle has been your whole life is going to impact that. So like I said earlier, it doesn't have to be this awful, terrible, like symptomatic thing. We see like the hot flashes and the mood swings and like the hair loss, like that's actually not normal. It's just very, very common. But like a lot of period symptoms that we have earlier that you probably were not listening to because you didn't know to listen to them.
Yeah.
So, I'd say the better you take care of your cycle now, the better that stage of your life is going to be, and a lot smoother and honestly very seamless. Like it can be totally symptom free. And if you are already at that stage of life, there's so much you could do to still support your hormonal health. And again, it's a stage that is often like you're often given like synthetic hormones to like quote unquote help that process. And I feel like that's just par for the course, but it's like, again, like women have been going through that for how many thousands of years? Like
the beginning of time.
Yes, it's the beginning of time. Like our bodies have been doing this for a very, very long time. I think they would have figured it out, not to mention again, how God designed it to begin with. It's just learning how to best support that. I'm excited to see like that get more talked about. There's a lot out there to support it.
Yes, I'm hoping that the education that we're gaining now is going to help us in the future and only going to hopefully further our passion for learning about our stages of life and our stages of our body at different ages. Caroline, this has been so joyful to have this conversation with you. You have a lot of free resources, as I mentioned. You have your website and you have your podcast that's available for people, your newsletter. You also offer courses and I believe coaching. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So I will link Caroline's information in the show notes if you're interested in learning more about menstrual health and your body, whether it's free or signing up for a course or coaching from Caroline. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you today, Caroline. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and empowering women to take charge of their health. It's just been such a cool experience to learn and be enlightened in my own education. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I could talk for days and days. I tried to keep it as brief as I could on all of these different things. Like you said, I have so many more resources on each of these things, and I'm happy to talk more with anybody who has questions.
Yes, I'm sure your direct messages are open for questions, and you have a plethora of videos that are super helpful for people. So I definitely encourage, if you have questions, go to Caroline's social media, which I'll also link in the show notes, and ask her questions because I'm sure she loves talking about it.
I do.
Well, if today's episode sparked your curiosity or gave you a sense of hope, I encourage you to explore more of Caroline's content, which I, again, will link in the show notes if you're interested. And if you're someone that's going through difficult periods, chronic cycle pain, or the heartbreak of infertility, I want you to know that you're not alone. Your experience is real and your pain is valid. There's strength in asking questions, in advocating for yourself, and in continuing to search for answers. Healing may not always be linear, but you deserve to to feel supported and empowered as you move through it. Your body is worth listening to, worth caring for, and worth trusting. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tune in next time as we continue to explore the lives of remarkable women. Until then, you are worth far more than rubies. Set about your work vigorously with arms strong for your tasks. Open your arms to the poor and extend your hands to the needy. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised.